Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I want to talk about the breaking news coming in from India about 7 foreigners that have entered India and then gone on to enter Myanmar illegally to train ethnic armed groups in the neighboring country. And some of those armed groups are banned in India. So without further ado, let's get into it. There's breaking news coming out of India, and India News or NDTV have broken the story on this particular incident where 7 foreign nationals have been arrested in India following a trip. They entered India on tourist visas and then illegally crossed over into Myanmar because the border is fairly porous, where they are accused of having illegally trained ethnic armed groups in Myanmar, as well as interacted with some banned groups in India too, who they trained.
So India's National Investigation Agency has just pulled off what may turn out to be one of the most consequential arrests in many years. And I want you to pay very close attention to every word I'm saying right now, viewer. An American citizen and 6 Ukrainians, these are pictures of them being arrested by the NIA. They've been picked up from airports in Lucknow, Kolkata and Delhi. They had entered India legally, tourists on paper, but what investigators say they found is anything but ordinary. Listen very carefully. These individuals, including 1 American and 6 Ukrainians, allegedly imported Ukrainian drones into India and physically crossed into Myanmar from Mizoram in the northeast to train local Burmese militant groups in drone warfare pointed at India.
Now, according to the charges and brought against those arrested, firstly, there are 7 of them that were arrested, 1 of which is an American citizen. The other 6 are Ukrainian nationals. And the 1 American that has been arrested is being named as Matthew Van Dyke. Now, Matthew Van Dyke is no stranger to conflict zones around the world. He's been active in Libya during the fall of Gaddafi. He's been active in Syria. He's recently been active in Ukraine. And he's featured quite a few times on Judging Freedom, the Judging Freedom podcast hosted by Judge Andrew Napolitano, a fantastic podcast. I urge you to check it out. During the course of this Ukrainian war that is continuing, Matthew Van Dyke has periodically, along with another person called Jack Devine, featured on Judge Napolitano's podcast. Now, I must stress at the outset, Judge Napolitano is not involved in this in any way. He's a very level-headed podcaster and likes to present both sides of the argument, hence Jack Devine and Matthew Van Dyke. However, Matthew Van Dyke seems to portray himself as this freedom fighter and somebody who goes around trying to assist the underdogs.
Hello there, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here. Welcome to a special Saturday edition of Judging Freedom. Today is Saturday, May 21st. It's about 11:15 in the morning on the East Coast of the United States and 6:15 in the evening in Kyiv, Ukraine. The reason I give you the Ukraine time is because our guest today is Matthew Van Dyke. Matthew is the founder of Sons of Liberty International, a nonprofit security and contracting firm that goes around the world helping and protecting people who are being attacked. Matthew and his company and his colleagues are gracious enough to give us their time and their perceptions from what they are actually literally seeing on the ground in Ukraine today, in the Ukrainian capital, in the midst of Vladimir Putin's war. Matthew, it's a pleasure. Welcome to Judging Freedom.
Thank you for having me.
So give us, we're glad you're here. Give us the big picture. what you're doing there, how long you've been there, and what you've seen, and then we'll slice and dice it up a little bit.
Well, my nonprofit organization, Sons of Liberty International, has been in Ukraine for over 2 months now, training forces to fight against Russia and to both defend Ukraine from further Russian incursion and to liberate lands taken by Russia. We've been providing free advising, training, and supplies to forces here, both in Lviv, Kyiv, and in another city outside of Kyiv. We continue to expand our operations. We have several trainers on the ground. We've been training, at this point, hundreds of men. Right now, we're doing training of a few hundred at one time in one location, and we have another location where we're training a highly specialized elite unit for offensive operations against Russia within Ukraine.
And that is why he was seen in Ukraine. There was a point where in Ukraine he was reported, where he claimed to have been helping Ukrainians with anti-mining operations. But for all intents and purposes, this man is a mercenary. He's now been caught in Mizoram in India, and he's been arrested for helping to fund an anti-India insurgency within the country. He's also been there with these 6 Ukrainians, and they've been training these anti-India activists in terms of drone warfare and insurgency training. So, the man is clearly a mercenary. In fact, the National Investigation Agency, which is the country's top anti-terror body, has announced that it has arrested these 7 people. There's Ukrainian nationals along with Matthew Van Dyke. A special NIA court in Delhi has sent them to judicial custody for 11 days. All of them face charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, or UAPA. The court said they should be interrogated, hence the custody. According to the first information report, or the FIR, against the 7 foreign nationals, they went to restricted areas in Mizoram in the northeast, crossed into Myanmar illegally, and got in touch with ethnic armed organizations, EAOs, and some groups banned in India. The accused allegedly trained the armed groups, gave weapons, and helped in drone operations, the FIR stated. The charges indicate activity consistent with mercenary work. Now, it has to be noted that they are innocent until proven guilty. However, this is the MO, or the modus operandi, of Matthew Van Dyke. He is the founder of the Sons of Liberty International, and a lot of these NGOs, and same with CARE and all these other NGOs that are set up to perpetuate a narrative, but they go in as aid workers, or doctors to help, but they actually disguise. They're using this as a disguise to try and create instability and an insurgency within the country that they've penetrated. And this guy was highly active in Ukraine under the Biden administration, and I suspect that he evacuated Ukraine because the writing was on the wall when the Trump administration came in. Now, the American administration has noted that it is aware of the situation and it is monitoring it carefully. However, the Ukrainians have claimed that they are unaware and that they haven't been given access to their nationals. Now, a point to note is that Volodymyr Zelensky goes around the world trying, with his begging bowl. He's always trying to, blow smoke up Prime Minister Narendra Modi's behind, saying that, India should mediate and India should do this and do that. The man is complicit with acts of insurgency against India. He has assisted the Pakistani military establishment by supplying them with weapons to use against India. He has also received, I think it's 155mm shells from Pakistan during the course of the Ukraine war to use against the Russians. So he doesn't have a very high pedestal from which to spout his nonsense. Zelensky is a thief, he is a mass murderer, and he is part of an illegitimate government at present because his mandate has run out. He's meant to have held elections in Ukraine, and he's using the war as an excuse to delay that. So Zelensky and his Ukrainian government are the last people that the Indians probably want to listen to at this point. And why it makes more sense that Matthew Van Dyke is in there trying to create this insurgency is because he's been caught with Ukrainian nationals. And the last place he was active was Ukraine.
I've always had a belief that this war will go on for 2 or 3 years. I still hold that belief, but it's very clear what Putin is doing. He's buying time, hoping that the coalition in the West will fall apart. You know, a few elections in Europe or the United States go a certain way, and NATO support for Ukraine could dry up pretty quick. So, you know, he's buying time, same thing that he did when he propped up Assad in Syria, buy time until the coalition falls apart and just outlast the opponent. And hopefully Ukraine won't let that happen.
And he has been doing some work, if I'm not mistaken, with the Azov battalion and the neo-Nazis in that region. He is now going and getting involved in India. While he is innocent until proven guilty, I believe that he should be held, a trial should be held. And if he is found guilty, I believe that the Indian government should throw the full force of the law in terms of his sentence. I believe that he is no less different from those of the Ajmal Kasabs that have conducted, terror acts against the Indian state and the Indian people. So I think that while I think and I believe that the United States will try and do a deal because this is one of their citizens, honestly, I think that people like Matthew Van Dyke need to be made an example of. So if a trial is held and he is indeed found to be guilty, then I think the full force of the law should be thrown at him. I'm not certain what the maximum sentence should be. However, if it goes up to the level of the sentence received by Ajmal Kasab, I say give it to him. Because this is the bed he's made. This is the bed he needs to lie in. He is now trying to destabilize a country that he has absolutely no right to be involved in. He's got no business in India. He's lied. He's gone in on a tourist visa. And not only that, he's been taken in as a tourist, yet he's going and then perpetuating harm against the people of India. When you see what has happened in Pahalgam, when you see what has happened in cross-border attacks by the Pakistani regime into India, and what he is now fomenting in the northeastern provinces, I believe he is no different from the likes of Asim Munir, Shehbaz Sharif, LET, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and the lot that are trying to cause mayhem in India. So again, it may seem like a very strong statement, but I believe if he is found guilty, he should receive the full weight of the law in terms of sentencing. So I'm going to attach some of these videos.
So India's National Investigation Agency has just pulled off what may turn out to be one of the most consequential arrests in many years. And I want you to pay very close attention to every word I'm saying right now, viewer. An American citizen and 6 Ukrainians, these are pictures of them being arrested by the NIA. They've been picked up from airports in Lucknow, Kolkata and Delhi. They had entered India legally, tourists on paper, but what investigators say they found is anything but ordinary. Listen very carefully. These individuals, including 1 American and 6 Ukrainians, allegedly imported Ukrainian drones into India and physically crossed into Myanmar from Mizoram in the northeast to train local Burmese militant groups in drone warfare pointed at India. The apparent ringleader of this pack is a man named Matthew Van Dyke. He is well known enough to have his own Wikipedia page, a massive online following, 500,000 followers on Twitter, for instance. He describes himself as an international security consultant, a foreign fighter, and a media personality. American intelligence background is also being cited by some, but it is not confirmed. Now, here is where this becomes a 5-alarm fire for Indian national security. Matthew Van Dyke is an American citizen. If the preliminary charges hold, we're not talking about a spy thriller. We're talking about an American national, potentially. Nothing has been proven. Innocent until proven guilty according to Indian law. But we are talking about an American national potentially using Indian territory as a logistics base, bringing in offensive weaponry and training anti-India aligned groups right on India's doorstep in Myanmar. India's borders with Myanmar are already among its most porous. Insurgency, arms smuggling, ethnic conflict, and someone may have just been using a tourist visa to add drone warfare to this already very, very complicated mix. Now, the arrested men will need to answer many questions, but the questions being asked in India's national security corridors tonight will be even louder. This one is going to get very big and very fast. Let me tell you a little bit more about what we know so far. The National Investigation Agency has arrested Matthew Van Dyke. He is the US citizen known to be a global combat mercenary. Hurba Petro is Ukrainian citizen number 1. Sliviak Taras, Ukrainian citizen number 2. Ivan Sukmanovsky, Ukrainian citizen number 3. Stefan Kiv Marian, Ukrainian citizen number 4. Honcharuk Maxim, Ukrainian citizen number 5. Kaminsky Viktor is Ukrainian citizen number 6. So 6 Ukrainians and 1 American, that is 7 people. Now I want to put the spotlight on the sole American national who has been arrested. His name is Matthew Van Dyke. He's an American mercenary. He's been arrested on terror charges now by the NIA. Started out in the Libyan civil war in 2011. I was in Libya reporting that as well, by the way. He runs an organization or an NGO called Sons of Liberty International, claims to provide military training. In that sense, is a kind of war consultant or a mercenary, has worked with armed groups in many countries already, has 5 lakh or 500,000 followers on X or Twitter, as it used to be called, and is very well known on social media. Now, according to investigators, here's what the modus operandi may have been. I want to be very careful in reporting that much of this information is uncorroborated. It's come from the investigators, and that's what we are bringing to you here on NDTV. But all the disclaimers apply to what we are bringing to you. The group reportedly came to India on a tourist visa. Matthew Van Dyke and the 6 Ukrainians came on a tourist visa. They traveled to Guwahati in Assam and then to Mizoram. From Mizoram, they crossed into Myanmar, across the border. It's a pretty porous border. There, they contacted anti-India groups in Myanmar. They were probably enlisted by those groups. The charge is that they trained militant groups in the forests of Myanmar bordering India in drone warfare. Those drones had already been imported from Ukraine into India and then smuggled across the border into Myanmar in order to train those groups in anti-India activities. This is a huge alarm bell that is ringing right through India's national security corridors tonight, and that's the reason why it is one of my big stories on India Matters. Bringing in Aditya Raj Kaul, our senior executive editor. He looks at security as well. He's of course been reporting from Tel Aviv. Vishnu Shom, senior managing editor, and Anushka Garg, our crime correspondent, is live with us from Delhi, where these 7 men were produced in court just a few hours ago. Vishnu, I want to quickly come to you first. First thoughts on this. This is pretty alarming right off the bat. Even the scant information you have suggests something pretty troubling. Matthew Van Dyke, a well-known global mercenary of sorts, sitting in India and accused, as it stands, of training anti-India militants in Myanmar in drone warfare.
I personally think that this man he's an arms dealer, he's some sort of a warlord, he's got a history and reputation of operating in all of these areas, whether it's Libya or in Myanmar. He was providing drones to insurgents who are fighting against each other in Myanmar. Now, given the complexity and the volatile nature of that frontier between India and Myanmar, there have been occasions when several of these groups, and their splinter groups as well, have targeted Indian security forces as well. So there is a very correct apprehension that some of these drones could have been used against India. Now, drones, as you know, come in all shapes and sizes. If these were first-person view drones with small, dropping grenades or something like that, those would pose a significant sort of danger to Indian forces. The fact that he was actually providing these meant that he was being paid off. He was being paid for these. Who in Myanmar was actually paying for this? Was this drug money which was actually involved? But this man, Van Dyke, he is a real character. As you mentioned, founder of the Sons of Liberty. It calls itself a non-profit organization, but has provided training and support to various armed groups in conflict zones. He calls himself some sort of a freedom fighter. He's got a degree in political science, but he was a combatant in the 2011 Gaddafi war, which you covered, the Libyan civil war. He was captured. He was jailed as well, right? He's been involved in the Syrian civil war, the Russo-Ukrainian war, etc., etc. And now he's importing potentially Ukrainian weaponry, which could be used against India. So it is bizarre without a doubt, but thank heavens that he's been caught, along with the others.
That's right. 7 people have been caught, including 6 Ukrainians. Anushka, what are the investigators telling you? I do know that the Ukrainian embassy, for instance, has issued a note of protest saying that they haven't gotten consular access to these guys. The Americans have confirmed to us that they are aware of the situation but cannot reveal any more because of privacy issues. What are the investigators telling you? These people have been put into police remand right now till the 27th of March.
Well, that's right, Shiv. What we have given to understand in this case is that all of them have been sent to police custody for 11 days. A case under UAPA has been, in fact, lodged against them. Now, in this whole case, Matthew Van Dyke is a person of interest where he has, in fact, created, a page called SOLI, wherein he, in fact, identifies himself as a war strategist. And not just that, he has, in fact, also said that he's a documentary filmmaker. With 500,000 following that he has on the Twitter page, we have also seen that in this whole matter, this has in fact come to light that he was trying to in fact get in touch with the ethnic groups in Mizoram, after which he was trying to train them in drone warfare. Not just that, he was also trying to establish contact with banned terror outfits in and outside of Mizoram, where in fact we have seen that the NIA had in fact gotten hint of this whole situation. Now he has been given into police custody for 11 days. One person, Matthew Van Dyke, was arrested from Kolkata. 3 Ukrainians were arrested from Lucknow and 3 Ukrainian were arrested from Delhi in this case. They have all been produced in front of the Patiala High Court at the NIA court. Now, in this whole case, these agencies have said that they need time to so that they can in fact relocate the way by which they came here. First, they landed in Guwahati. After that, they went to Mizoram illegally and then crossed the borders, which is rather porous, as you have rightly mentioned. And they went to Myanmar so that they can in fact establish contact with several militant groups and create such kind of a situation. Now, about this Matthew Van Dyke, what we have gotten to understand is that 2 of his friends were executed by the ISIS. In retaliation, he created the page SOLI, after which he in fact went to several other places. He's a person of interest. He was in the Libya war that happened in 2011, and now we have seen that this case has emerged from Myanmar, where all of these people have in fact been arrested and have been taken into custody. 14 Ukrainians had entered via the route to Guwahati. Now the NIA is trying to establish as to what their whole plan was and how they were planning this kind of a conspiracy in the Indian soil, and that is how we have seen that this case has in fact come to light. Now we are seeing the investigation is continuing, and in a few while the NIA will be in fact trying to establish as to what all was in plan with all these people. Over to you,
Aditya. I want to bring you in for a quick word on this. This is pretty troubling. We've been talking a lot about drones through this entire war, and here you have a high-profile warlord or mercenary from the United States training potentially anti-India terror or militant groups in the very warfare that we are talking about at this time. This is something that must be sounding the loudest alarms in the national security corridors, Aditya.
Well, absolutely, Shiv. The occurrence that has happened over the last few days has huge national security repercussions, and some senior officers who are experts in anti-terror have been given the charge to investigate this throughout the country. As Anushka was also pointed out, all these people will be taken to Guwahati, to Kolkata, and to Mizoram to recreate that entire scene. The biggest question right now is to unearth the conspiracy behind it, and also to establish that who were they working at behest of. Was this only an assignment for that kind of a separatist group in Myanmar, or was this a larger conspiracy in which states or deep states or some other entity could be really involved? Because India's neighborhood has been also involved in supplying weapons and money to these people in India's neighborhood. So certainly that would be the huge concern right now, that these people were moving out freely in India and certainly were in touch with several other people. Their phones in particular, their emails and messages would be studied in detail. But for national security, the biggest question certainly would be if there is a larger conspiracy behind it, because Ukrainian drone experts were also along with this particular person, Matthew Van Dyke, who is the main person of interest.
All right. Thanks, Aditya, Anushka, and Vishnu for joining me on that. I want to get an expert view because this is still, remember, a developing story. So information coming in is still evolving. I want to put that disclaimer out, but this is what we know so far. Welcoming Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Expert and Senior Fellow with the Observer Research Foundation. Yashovardhan Azad, Ex-Special Director with the Intelligence Bureau, former Secretary of Security with the Government of India. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Sushant Sareen, quickly to you first. What are you making of this? Matthew Van Dyke and these 6 Ukrainians arrested from 3 different airports. They apparently went into Myanmar after importing some drones. Initial thoughts, Sushant?
One, they're not tourists. So clearly,
Yeah.
The Ukrainians seem to be suggesting these are not tourists. They've come out here on a sinister agenda. That is very clearly established. And if they really wanted to train somebody in drone warfare, maybe a more appropriate theater these days would have been the Middle East rather than coming to India's Northeast. But aside from that, look, we don't know, are these guys mercenaries or are they state actors?
Yeah.
Working under the cover of plausible deniability, because don't forget, Shiv, that this is an area where over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of footage coming in, a lot of information coming in of people from the United States and some of the other Western countries going into Myanmar, working in conjunction with some of the groups out there, ethnic armed groups as they are called. We also know that American special forces have been coming into this area, especially the Arakan region, and there have been, at least there has been talk, including by the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, of this grand conspiracy which is being hashed. Now, I'm not getting into a conspiracy theory right now, but those things have been there on the table. So clearly there is something more to what is happening. And I think what this incident also proves right now, everything that is coming out in the press and everything that is being leaked by the security agencies is probably not all what is happening, because they'll be keeping a lot of the cards to their chest. You have a distinguished intelligence officer sitting on this program. He'll probably bear me out on this. But the fact remains, Shiv, that this is some evidence that Indian intelligence agencies are working well. That they are able to get these kind of characters. They are able to give them a long rope and then rein them in when the time is right. So obviously they will have a lot more information. There will be a lot more investigations that will happen.
Let's ask Yashovardhan Azad about that. Yashovardhan Azad, these guys were arrested from the Delhi, Lucknow and Kolkata airports. 3 separate airports they were apprehended in. And I agree with Sushant. Clearly, some very good investigative work has landed these guys, in the NIA's hands.
Absolutely right. I think it's a great NIA work. And, Sushant has alluded to something very sinister. And let me go further on that. See the kind of profile you have given of this particular man, and see the theaters where he has. You were in Libya, and he's talking about Iran. He's talking about other areas. These are the conflict areas where nation states are also interested. So I'm alluding to something further. His entire profile says that this kind of operation which he's conducting, at the level which he's conducting, and the kind of posse he has, the arms he has to be backed by a very serious intelligence agency. And you can understand what I'm referring to. Yes, it is the CIA. And it is in their interest to sort of see these areas. Sometimes Mr. Trump has made it very open also. So since it cannot operate directly, it does also in a clandestine manner. Secondly, you see, this is the most highly sensitive corridor. when we are talking about the Mizoram and the border with Myanmar, the whole thing comes back again where we had talked about the porous border. You remember the Golden Bird operation in 1995, where arms which were given to these, Manipuri and other insurgents who were crossing through South Mizoram. That was the operation in which the Myanmar army had also participated. But third point, Shiv, which is the most serious, which I feel is that Manipur is it in a cauldron, right? And the fighters of the professionals of the Manipur are getting back into it. And you have a buffer zone right now between the two groups.
Yeah.
Now, if you if it becomes a kind of a elevated tech war using the drones, and mind you, here we are trying to have a counter drone grid both on the east and the west corridor. So looking at these, whatever information you have given me, because beyond that, yes, we should not conjecture. What I'm saying is that it has a grave security implications right now. And I do hope that NIA in these 11 days, because I think the next date is March 27th,
yes,
they are able to unearth something. Because two things I want to find out. How many times these people have been able to get here again earlier, and what kind of weaponry or thing they have already supplied, because Northeast is in ferment. That way, things are in quiet, but places like Manipur, Nagaland, some of the groups still not happy about the accord, etc. We would be very, very keen to look at this theater.
Will we be able to get to the bottom of something like this if it is indeed a state-backed kind of operation, Sushant? As we well know, these intelligence-backed operations, there are layers and layers and wheels within wheels, and then diplomacy comes in, and then everything kind of just evaporates.
Look, even if we are going to get to the bottom of it, it's not necessary that these guys are going to be punished under Indian law. There will be some kind of deals which will be made on the back channel, which is the normal thing in this kind of operation. But there are two things which, are important. One, obviously, these clowns think that India is such a soft state. If you look at the local cops anywhere, you'll see, they're clumsy, they're not smart, they're not well turned out, they're bumbling, they look bumbling fools. And so it's very normal for some of these guys to think that India is such a soft state. You can just land in out here, bring in all your stuff, cross the border, and nobody will be wiser for it. I'm sure now they know that's not necessarily the case. Second, and I think this is something which also needs to be investigated. How the hell are they able to get in the drones?
Correct.
To India, in the sense that these are not, unless these are, those FPVs. But even those, there is a lot of monitoring at airports. Shiv, if you were to get even one of those toy drones, there's a small, a couple of inches by a couple of inches kind of stuff, which is basically meant for shadi videos and stuff like that. Even that you have to start declaring, beyond a certain level.
That's right.
You need to declare customs, and there is a Hawkeye kept at Indian airports on this. So how are these guys able to get these drones? Because from whatever reports that have appeared, there were multiple drones which they were taking into these areas. And I think Mr. Azad is quite right that if you are now ramping up the kind of insurgency, the violence, the unrest in that particular region at the tech level to bring in, these force multipliers.
Disastrous.
It's a very, very serious situation for the security agencies, which are already with in a sense, with their back to the wall to keep the peace in the region. And mix in all of this, the narcotics trafficking which is taking place and all kinds of other, there is the critical minerals aspect to this whole thing which is happening in Myanmar, with the Chinese jumping in, the Americans wanting a slice of the pie, the Indians also looking for something. So it's a witch's brew. And make this kind of an arrest, I think there should be a wealth of information available.
I hope so. Mr. Azad, I have about 30 seconds left, so I'll give that to you. Do you think we'll get to the bottom of it? I know it's a broad question, but like you said, this is already a complex and difficult situation in the Northeast. And you bring in drones, and we're seeing live what drones can do in the current Gulf War in Ukraine as well. Bringing that into this picture would be a catastrophe, sir.
I'm extremely worried now about the FMR regime. We've already been worried because we have tried everything. We said that, whether it should be the Assam rifle should be replaced, BSF should be there. We talked about those entry points. Should we reduce them? But now it is turning into a theater of real conflict, because we have to get the information from these guys as to how actually porous it has been. And I'm most worried. My last closing comment would be, I'm most worried about what is happening in Manipur. The entire country, as far as the internal stability is concerned, is purely stable. So where can you get entry for any kind of disturbance? And that is the Manipur corridor. And with what is happening in Myanmar right now, I think it's a very, very serious kind of a connection we need to explore.
Absolutely.
And we need to look into.
We will continue to report it, and I acknowledge that there are many unanswered questions and there are some leaks, etc. also. But we will report to the best of our abilities. Thank you very much, Sushant Sareen and Yashovardhan Azad, for being with me here tonight. Thank you.
And once again, I want to say Judge Napolitano is his Judging Freedom podcast is absolutely amazing. Go and check it out, because he gives you all sides of the story. He is in no way complicit. I'm not trying to malign him or say anything bad about him. It's just that I was made aware of Matthew Van Dyke when I saw him on this podcast, and that is how the alarm bells rang immediately when they said he was arrested with 6 Ukrainian nationals, because it made sense. The last time we heard about Matthew Van Dyke, he was busy in Ukraine on anti-mining operations and working with the Azov battalion. And I remember at one point, I think he was involved there in the skirmish near the nuclear plant in Ukraine. So this is somebody that thrives on conflict zones, that makes money out of these conflict zones. So I don't think the world should be fooled with his so-called empathy and humanitarian gestures, because he's just hopping from place to place trying to make money and sow discord. And under the Biden administration, I think he was amply funded and looked after. So I want to thank you for spending time with us. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.